Hola, buenas tardes. Les quiero hacer este pequeño vídeo para explicarles algunos de los conceptos que se van a ver en el examen final. Subjunctive and adverbial clauses, just to make this super simple. So this point one here, let's take out all the fancy verbiage. All this means is that when you see these words in bold, these are phrases that always trigger the subjunctive. Okay? Always. So just familiarize yourself with these expressions, especially the common ones like unless, which is a menos que. Para que is super common, obviously. En caso de que. All right. Número dos here, this point, there's a little nuance here. I'm not worried that you know it because, frankly, it's not going to be on the final. And point three, there's a super simple distinction that we can make with the word aunque. Aunque has two translations depending on what you're trying to say. When aunque means even if it takes the subjunctive, okay? So even if it rains tonight, we're going to go out. We're going to get out of the house, okay? Even if it rains. That's hypothetical. We're going to use the subjunctive. So the verb is llover. So aunque llueva esta noche, vamos a salir, okay? When aunque means even though, then it's a statement of fact. You're telling about something that in reality exists. So even though, let's say I go to a store and I want to buy a shirt, and the shirt costs like $25, which to me is expensive, but I really want to buy it, I could say, even though the shirt costs a lot, I will buy it. So here it's a statement of fact. So I will say, aunque la blusa cuesta mucho, la voy a comprar. But let's say I'm talking about an unknown shirt. You know, I want to buy a particular shirt. I'm not sure how much it costs. And I say, even if it costs a lot, because I don't know yet, I will buy it. In that case, I'm going to flip the verb to cueste. Aunque la blusa cueste mucho, which it could or it could not, just depending, la voy a comprar. All right, so it's just a little nuance that changes the meaning, which is what part 3 is trying to explain to you. So let's take a quick look at this aplicación A, which was one of your weekly preps. A quick glance at this will show you that all of these phrases, a menos que, a no ser que, and here we have a menos que again, all of these are going to trigger the subjunctive. So the question is, present subjunctive or past subjunctive? Well, if we look at our verb in the first clause, mañana asistiré a clase. Your verb asistir is in the future tense. So tomorrow I will go to class unless these four things happen. All right? If, listen to this part carefully, if your first clause, all right, your first verb that you see leading up the sentence, if that verb is in the present or if it's in the future, you have to follow it with the present subjunctive. All right? You can't have a past subjunctive here. That wouldn't make any sense. Your time sequence would be totally off. So we're just using present subjunctive for that one. Same thing for número dos, because número dos we have preparo, which is present. And then our third question, our third sentence, we have ahorro, which is also present. So we could say things here like, asistiré a clase a menos que mi coche no funcione. A menos que yo esté enfermo. A menos que nieve mucho. A menos que la clase se cancele. All right? So all of these present subjunctive. Same on número dos. Todas las noches preparo mi lección de español a no ser que mis amigos me inviten a salir. A menos que, o a no ser que haya programas muy buenos. A menos que me duela la cabeza. A menos que tenga que estudiar otra asignatura. Número 3. Generalmente ahorro $50 a la semana. So generally I save $50 a week. Unless, by the way, ahorro is our verb to save when we're talking about money. We have two other verbs that mean to save. So when we're talking about if you're saving a person, like saving their life, you would use salvar. If you're saving a document or you're saving something for later, you're going to use the verb guardar. So this one is strictly for dinero. Letra A, so a menos que hayan tenido gastos extraordinarios. Letra B, a menos que sea el cumpleaños de algún amigo. Letra C, a menos que tenga que pagar alguna deuda. Letra D, a menos que alguien me pida dinero prestado. All right, so that was that activity. Let's see what else we had to complete in this lesson. All right, let's skip the rest of that. All right, let's talk about this. Page 160, the subjunctive after conjunctions of time. All right, so one thing you need to know. Anytime you see the phrase antes de que, anytime you see it, you're going to have to follow it with a subjunctive. Anytime, okay? So, antes de que, always followed by subjunctive. The rest of these, we have a rule that applies, all right? It depends on your meaning. So, when we're talking about a habitual action, okay, meaning something that happens all the time, like my example is, I always eat a snack as soon as I get home from work. All right? I always eat a snack as soon as I get home from work. This is a habitual action. So I would just use present tense, regular old indicative present tense. All right? So siempre como una merienda cuando or apenas llego a casa. Okay? But if I'm talking about something that hasn't happened yet, so this afternoon, all right, this afternoon I'm going to eat a snack as soon as I get home. I haven't arrived home yet, all right, and this is the key. It hasn't happened yet, it's in the future. In this case, I'm going to say, voy a comer una merienda apenas llegue a casa, all right? We could use that exact same sentence, replacing apenas with cuando, en cuanto, etc. Tan pronto como. All right. Another thing to remember is that when we're narrating an action in the past, this is something that happened in reality. All right. So let's say that yesterday, my husband watched the baby until I finished cooking dinner. In that case, we're narrating an action in the past. So mi esposo cuidó al bebé hasta que yo terminé de preparar la cena. All right, straight indicative. But once again, if we're talking about something that hasn't happened yet, then we're going to end up using subjunctive. So let's say we're going to study this material until, or how about this? I'm going to explain this material until you understand. So voy a explicar este material hasta que ustedes lo entiendan. All right? In that case, we're talking about something that hasn't happened yet. All right? That is the distinction with all of these conjunctions of time. All right, so let's see if that makes sense with some examples. So looking at your weekly prep. And here it's a 50-50 chance, right, of getting it right. Número 1. Después que hayas escrito o escribiste la carta. Your key here to figure it out is this expression. Ponla en el sobre. So after you finish, or after you have written the letter, put it in the envelope. Or after you wrote the letter, put it in the envelope. Okay, that doesn't make sense. So our first option, hayas escrito, is what you want. Número 2. Estoy dispuesta a hacer el trabajo mientras me pagaron o me paguen bien. So I'm willing to do the work as long as they paid me well, or as long as they pay me well. All right, it has to be paguen. The pagaron would not make sense because your timeline would be off. That doesn't sound right. Número 3. Usted deberá esperar hasta que llegue o llega su turno. Your key here is deberá. This is future. All right, so you should wait until it's your turn, basically. All right, this is future action that has not happened yet. All right, we don't have a future subjunctive in Spanish. Now, we used to, like hundreds of years ago, but fortunately for y'all, it's disappeared, fused with the present, so we just use present. So, hasta que llegue su turno. Número 4. Dijo que cuando dieron las 12, comeríamos. By the way, when we see this verb dar with a number, what it means is like, it means it's talking about the clock striking 12. So, he said, or she said, that whenever 12 o'clock came around, whenever it was 12, we would eat. This one's a bit tricky, but we know that it's in the past, all right? the issue here is that we have a conditional form, comeríamos. So we would eat, we were going to eat whenever it was 12 o'clock. So from the point of view of this, of whoever's saying this sentence, 12 o'clock has not happened yet. All right? And that's the key. Whenever 12 o'clock rolled around, whenever that was, then we would eat. And so here we're going to use dieran. If that doesn't make sense, think of this. Just remember that when we have conditional pairs with the imperfect subjunctive. You see those together a lot. All right? We see those in the if clauses as well. So if I were rich, I would buy a mansion. Just for purposes of an example. So, si fuera rica, compraría una mansión. Número 5. This one's not too hard. You just have to recognize this form esperasteis. So, sé que esperasteis hasta que vuestro consejero estuvo or estaría desocupado. Look carefully at the first part. I know that y'all waited. This is past tense. I know that y'all waited until your counselor was free. All right? This is fact. This is fact. So we're going to just use plain old past tense, preterite tense, estuvo. Número 6. Luisa se arrepintió. She regretted it. She was sorry, basically, after she told it to her boyfriend, after she told him. So if we're looking at a timeline, she regretted something that she had said. This actually happened, right? So we're going to use regular old preterite tense. So, se arrepintió después que se lo dijo a su novio. We think of it another way. We could list out these actions on a timeline. Put an X by the actions. Firstly, we have se lo dijo a su novio. That's a discrete point on the timeline. Then we have se arrepintió. Número 7, saldré. When you see saldré, that should be like a red flag, all right? You should think saldré, future. That means that whatever's coming up hasn't happened yet, all right? Which means you're going to have to use subjunctive. So I will leave for the station, like the train station, as soon as I get dressed, all right? Saldré para la estación tan pronto como me vista. If we want to compare, when would we use visto? Well, we would use visto if I say I always leave. Let's say I have to travel by train a lot, which I did when I was in Germany. We could say salgo para la estación. Siempre salgo para la estación tan pronto como me visto. 8. Después que. So far we don't know which is which. We have to keep remembering. We have to keep reading the rest of the sentence. Look at your verb. Your verb is se verá, which is future. So after we paint the walls, the room will look better. Have we painted the walls yet? No, we have not. Después que is a phrase that requires subjunctive if the action hasn't happened yet. All right? So it's pintemos. Después que pintemos las paredes, el cuarto se verá mejor. Now, side note, French works differently. In French, you would use the future, but this isn't French, it's Spanish, so we're going to use pintemos. Número 9. ¿Cuándo? Cuando termine o cuando termina el verano, compraremos alfombras nuevas. What tense is compraremos? It's future. So what are we going to use? We're going to use termine, because the summer has not ended yet. So whenever summer ends, we will buy new carpets. Número 10, el jurado, which is the jury. El jurado no dará su veredicto mientras que no blank un voto unánime. What tense is dará? Future. So we have the future. We have a phrase that could trigger subjunctive. We know that it does because we have mientras que. So we need haya. So the jury will not give their verdict until or while there is still not a unanimous vote. Número 11. I'm running out of time, that's why I'm talking kind of quickly here. No me gusta salir a la calle cuando. I don't like to go out on the street when it rains. Is there anything here that makes this a future action that hasn't happened? No. It's habitual. I could have put a siempre in there and it would make sense. So, cuando llueve, all right? And número 12, en cuanto, as soon as you washed the clothes, that would be lavó, you should iron it, or as soon as you have washed the clothes, you should iron it. Well, our haya lavado makes more sense, so we're going to go with haya lavado. Okay, y es todo por el momento. Hasta luego.